Put your hands together for Matt Oswalt.
Thank you, Christine. I want to hear more about that Friends with Benefit thing. What was that? What kind of bookstore is this? Quick programming note, just in case we're all rounded up and tossed into internment camps during the evening. We're going to finish this in hut number 9 behind the latrine, okay? Password is Brexit. This thing come out? Can I take this thing out? Oh, I can't take it out. I can? There we go. Okay. What a travesty of a day in America. But an amazing night to come out and listen to some storytelling, right? God. Michael McKean, he's here, and I had this great thing I was talking to my brother about. It's America, right? Here's how I feel about America. America right now, America was like Spinal Tap, and we are currently in the Jazz Odyssey phase of our country. Like literally, Scott Baio is like playing the bass, and we're all just sitting there just with the thumbs down in the front row watching. That's really where we are. But it's so surreal to be here because, like, as we're sitting here, listening to some literature, there's marching in the streets. There's like some huge rally everywhere, like pitchforks, and it's crazy. It's like. But that's even better. I'm so glad we're here. I mean, I woke up this morning, I was really bummed out, but I'm also like, I get to go and do this event tonight. And it's so much better to be doing this than to be staying at home, screaming at egg avatars on Twitter and watching those 24-hour news. This is good. So I'm so glad to see it sold out and everybody here. And let's just take our minds off, whatever. And that said, wow, I heard something upstairs in the loft area.
We're excited to be here.
They're excited, I know. I want to introduce this person. I call her a professional scene stealer. She is in a lot of movies, and you remember her in every one of them, from Ghost World to Cape Fear to Goodfellas. She's a great actress, but she's a memorable actress. She steals scenes that she's in. We're very good friends, and this book she wrote, I love it because it's all framed around movies. It's kind of like, have any of you guys ever read that book, Easy Riders, Raging Bull? That book, her book is just like that, only from a woman's perspective, and it's a fascinating biography wrapped around movies. So without further ado, come on down, just like Scarlett O'Hara in Gone with the Wind. Please welcome Illeana Douglas. I'm going to put this up here. There we go. There she is. Come on down.
Yes, dear. Hi there.
Hi. How are you doing? Did you get any sleep last night?
No, I got no sleep. I've been drinking nonstop. Yeah. I'm finally. The good thing about Trump is I'm no longer embarrassed about my alcoholism.
Oh man!
Just bring it out in the open.
A commodity in this world of ours,
Just bring it out in the open.
Yeah. I thought I was going to wake up and like Los Feliz was going to like transformed into Pottersville overnight.
Yeah.
The Dresden was going to be like an Olive Garden, and like the Skylight was going to be like an adult bookstore with like Uncle Billy working the
Yeah.
But it's just this crazy day. But
I know. My neighbor, my real life neighbor, is actually Lena Dunham. So
really.
I guess I'll be helping her.
Thanks for the rap video. That really worked. Boy, that convinced all the undecided.
Yeah. Between that and the Lady Gaga, that really went over well in the Rust Belt in Pennsylvania.
In the Rust Belt, yeah.
Thanks for that.
What the Rust Belt people really are concerned over is the proper pronoun to use when addressing a transgender person. That's the number one priority of the Rust Belt people. Yeah, thanks, guys.
I'd say there's like one positive. The weird. There's my friend Peter. Hi, Peter. My Jennifer.
There's a lot of people. You have to point out every single person you recognize, Illeana.
It's just that I had such a nice, as we all maybe did, I had such a nice moment yesterday voting on Laurel in West Hollywood.
Did you?
And
okay.
I was like...
Yeah, your live voted sticker. And
I got my... it was like... it was so touching. There was like a third African-American, and there was Mexican Mexicans, gay people, and we were like, we're just the best. We were like high-fiving each other, like, we got it going on. We're going to legalize marijuana.
Yeah.
We're like, we're so fucking hip. And then, 10 hours later, we're mainlining heroin.
Yeah.
Who are we? What is happening?
Yeah.
So,
Gary Johnson became like the Dean Wormer from Animal House. Has ruined everybody's good time.
Yeah.
He came out there and just I'm gonna steal a couple of votes and screw everybody over.
Yeah. I started to feel like I was I was in a car ride with my parents going to Vermont, where we just want to blame someone for whose fault is this? It's well, Joan, if we hadn't started earlier, and if you hadn't wanted to get the bathing suit, we just want to find someone to blame at this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it went from kumbaya to
pitchforks in the street. There literally are people in every major city. There are protests going on right now. And I have to ask, I wonder how many of those people actually voted yesterday. You know what I'm saying? That's the
You think so?
I don't know.
But in spite of it all, again, I feel like the artists, it's going to be our responsibility to
make people even more depressed.
Yeah.
Yeah. To just show them that once you're down there, you can even go a little deeper.
I think that in spite of everything,
and on that note,
yeah,
1972, young Illeana Douglas.
Yes.
We're going to talk about. I'm going to hold your book up here.
Yes, thank you.
I'm going to ask you a couple questions, and then we're going to bring down these wonderful people upstairs to read sections of this book.
My friends are so nice, and they're
so great.
Not drunk like I am. So.
Yeah. They're getting there, yeah. Hey. There's some wonderful Hitching Post wine that I brought. It's so good from the Sideways. If you guys are, please help yourself. Yeah.
If you're not drinking, start drinking.
Yeah.
It's going to make life so much better for 4 years.
Doesn't it feel like we're like the band on the Titanic? Like we're up here doing this little, and literally the entire world is collapsing, and we're just, so tell me about working with Matt Dillon. Boom, big explosion out there.
Well, that's the key. I feel a little homage to Edward G. Robinson and Soylent Green. Just put me on the slab and show me a movie of all the good things that have happened in my life.
God, yeah. We booked this event about 2 months ago.
Yeah.
I was the one that noticed that it was the night after the election. And I remember talking, I said, hey, what if Trump wins? Laugh, laugh. Nobody is going to want to show up to this thing. They're going to be way too depressed. But we both were like, that's just not going to happen. So we never conceivably thought that we'd be in this position.
I've done something really interesting. I had a very funny epiphany because a lot of the book is, wrote each chapter is a story about my life, how a movie changed my life. And I remember it was 1980, and I remember doing musical theater. I was a kid in Avon, Connecticut, and doing The Music Man. And I remember literally we had to perform the night that Reagan won. And I remember people, again, were sounds like it's funny, but people were coming off stage and vomiting. And
really? Was it because of his acting or because of his politics?
Because they were they sensed, I think as artists, we want a utopia. This is what the whole book is about. My parents, they saw the movie Easy Rider, and they changed their entire lives. And
your life with it, yeah.
Yeah, and they believed in this utopia. And I think that artists, as Pollyanna as it sounds, believe in a utopia, that art can change things, that we can have a message, that we all want to live in this world where we all kind of love each other. And again, I remember those Reagan years were very tough. I remember being a kid and watching grown-ups come off the stage of a crazy musical like The Music Man and telling us, everything's going to be bad. Everything,
Wow.
and it's going to be bad. And I mean, I think that if you're an artist, selfishly, you think, well, the first thing Newt Gingrich is going to do, because that's what he's did, is going to try to stop the National Endowment of the Arts. That's what he did with Jane Alexander. That's what, art becomes the least important thing in a society, and art joins us all together, makes us laugh, makes us feel as if we're all in the same ballpark. And I think that for us that are artists, that's the thing that scares us most, because we're united by films
and you have experience for that. So this election must have made you even more. It must have brought back a lot of bad memories from oh my God, this is not again.
My grandfather was Melvyn Douglas.
Yeah.
They keep all day long. They keep quoting the scene from The Candidate. What now? Yeah. He was a remarkable person with great liberal ideas. That was like, I was 12 years old. I was like, Grandpa, I can't comprehend, the Franco regime. I just want to see Evita. It's going over my head, but that's the kind of grandparents I had. My grandmother was Helen Gahagan Douglas. She ran for Senate in 1950. Yeah. And my grandfather was the type of person, I remember, having an experience with him. He was very much like that dyed-in-the-wool kind of liberal. And I wanted to sit at, he would have these like dinners with playwrights like, Robert Anderson or Gore Vidal or Myrna Loy, and I remember saying, and he lived on Riverside Drive, and I remember saying, I want to sit at the grown-ups table. And he said, when you're interesting, you can sit at the grown-ups table. And you would think that was harsh, except that in my growing up, that was the bargain that I think we all lived by. I used to go to my grandfather's library and touch all the books that he had and think, I don't understand these books, but I know it's important to read them. Madame Bovary, Norman Mailer, Gore Vidal. I don't know what Herman Hesse. I used to see these things and not understand them, but we had this bargain that there were important things. You were supposed to go to Paris and look at the Mona Lisa in your lifetime. He would always tell me, the first thing you need to do when you're 18 is go to Europe and travel around Europe. We had a certain bargain as a society. And I think that that's what, me personally, I don't know if other people, I had such a love for him and such a love of this intelligence. Like, when I'm smart, I get to sit at the grown-ups table. I get to sit at the table with Gore Vidal. Yeah. And I feel that's what I feel shaky about kind of right now.
Was your grandfather, was he around when your dad read Easy Riders and completely changed and what was his opinion of that? Because your life was different, but you have like a pre and post Easy Rider life, don't you?
Yes, and absolutely.
I'm curious what Melvin's.
Well, because my grandfather comes out of the studio system where he's in movies with Greta Garbo, and life is amazing. And then my dad is like the counterculture. He's like the monkeys doing head. It's like everything is insanity, and I think he was trying to understand it, like the Hollywood establishment was trying to do. They were trying to understand it, but yet it was that call to values of like what were the liberal values, what were the post-war liberal values versus the 60s radicals values, which was my dad's values were, anti-establishment, anti-capitalism, we're going to like live off the land. The values of Easy Rider were that, were the anti-government, anti-establishment, and my grandfather worked for a living.
Yeah.
So that became.
And when you were in that studio system, it was a complete departure to think that the way Dennis Hopper made movies and that it was a completely different experience. So I think that maybe he had a hard time understanding that probably relating to your dad when he kind of...
But I think that he was trying to relate to it in the way that probably Henry Fonda were trying to relate to Jane Fonda. They're trying to relate to it, yet their values, it's just my opinion, comes out of World War II values of like, yes, we want fairness for all, but my dad's values and my mom's values were like, no, we have to blow up everything.
Wow.
And that, the interesting thing with my dad is with this commune, he started, he saw the movie Easy Rider, and which is so interesting today, again, with this, with what's happening, and Dennis Hopper isn't here. And sometimes I work for TCM, and I've been prepping for my interview with Dick Cavett.
Yeah.
With so many interesting people, but again, we're like, are we thinking about a world that doesn't exist anymore? Like, again, we're remembering these, these values, things that we no longer hold important anymore. But my grandfather's values were the values to feed every person, and post-depression values. My dad's values were the government is the problem. Unhook your television, live off the land, drop acid, free love. It was blowing up the system.
Yeah. Well, there were two significant moments in your life that you really wrote about eloquently in this book. It's the Easy Rider thing, then also working with a publicist, Peggy Siegel. That changed everything for you, didn't it?
Well, the interesting thing for me is, my parents were so into the Easy Rider movie and the hippie culture that for me, I gravitated, because I was looking for a father. And so the father that I found was my grandfather, was Melvyn Douglas. And if my parents were in their movie, their 60s movie, group therapy and free love and hey man, but I needed stability. And so my movie became Melvyn Douglas, because if I was with Melvyn Douglas, he was talking to Myrna Loy and, Paulette Goddard. So like my movie became, I want to be with my grandfather drinking champagne. And
so I'm curious so you're saying that the mirror father mirror sequence in Ghost World was about Melvyn Douglas? Okay, that's fascinating. I love that. Well, by the way, she directed. I mean, that was her idea. That was not in the script. She did the whole mirror father mirror thing.
Well, Terry,
as a part of that movie.
Yeah, Terry Zwigoff is such a doll, and he's worked sort of on a sidebar collaborating on different things. But yes, I had certain ideas having moved to New York in 1982, 83 about performance arts and things like that, wanting to
nailed that.
But everybody,
that
every actor knows that you put a lot of little things into performances we do.
Well, getting back to Peggy Siegel, that was the other significant moment. I mean, because that
well, working for Peggy Siegel, she was a film publicist that, I got out of acting school. I didn't want to be, I was very much interested in the journey of show business in addition to being an actor, and I worked for this film publicist, Peggy Siegel, amazing persona. We did the films Untouchables, Beverly Hills Cops, Princess Bride, worked with Barry Levinson, Michael Douglas. We had some amazing clients, but through working with her, it sort of got known. This was in the Brill Building on Broadway, and our neighbors got to know. I passed my resume out, and under my resume it said special skills, blood-curdling screams.
And how did that pay off for you?
That paid off pretty well because the director, his name was Martin Scorsese.
Yeah.
Incidentally, did you know that Rudy Giuliani, Christie, and Trump, they cite Goodfellas as one of their favorite films.
I'm surprised. Yeah.
I know.
Is Billy Batts their favorite character? It just seems like that's the guy they would gravitate towards, But
anyway, I work for this publicist, and again, the only reason I got this job God help us, because nobody even cares anymore. But, I knew the difference between, like, who Garson Kanin was. I was like, yeah, that's Garson Kanin. I knew that, Adolph Green was married to Phyllis Newman, but his partner was Betty Comden. And so, therefore, that was a skill. That was identified as a real, genuine skill. And so I worked for this publicist in New York and essentially inviting a lot of famous people to premieres and parties. But on our floor were many incredible directors, and Martin Scorsese was one of these directors. And I handed my resume, because you're young, you're like, hey, if anything ever comes up.
Are you kidding me?
And literally, like, one day, I'm like, do you really have a blood-curdling? Because they don't even have that anymore. It's so archaic.
Yeah.
But back in the day... To get a laugh, you'd put something funny under, like, special skills, So I wrote special skills, milking a goat, because I did know how to milk a goat, great legs, which I do have, and blood-curdling screams. And this caught the attention of Mr. Scorsese's assistant, and then which cut to me, meeting Marty and screaming for him,
And he loved your scream. He kept having you come back again and again because you were so good.
Each time I come down and scream, I screamed. I dubbed in Last Temptation of Christ. I dubbed all these screams. But through the process...
There's screams in Last Temptation of Christ? I didn't know that.
The fall of Rome. But through the process of doing this, I'd come down, and this is what's always so funny, which is I write about in the book, like, the only movie of Marty's that I really liked was King of Comedy, because I talk about, and people are going to be reading about this chapter, but I had a friend named Elias Koteas who bore a striking resemblance to Robert De Niro, and we went to acting school together in 1983, which is coincidentally the year that they shot King of Comedy, and Elias Koteas thought it'd be really fun to go to the set of, like looking like the guy from Taxi Driver and go to the set and...
Mohawk or no Mohawk? Chris?
He didn't have the Mohawk, but
Okay.
he had but he looked so much like De Niro that he was like, I'm going to go to the set. Because this is the kind of delusion you need when you're an actor. I'm going to go to the set. De Niro's going to see how much I look like him, and he'll put me in the movie. But in fact, what happened was that they thought he was a dangerous stalker, and they asked him to leave. And the next day in school, he was like, oh my God, it's amazing, amazing. They asked me to leave. And then years later, because, my life is a movie, and I'm only like making little checkpoints, I'm actually in a relationship with Martin Scorsese. He could be my future husband, but all I really care about is like, could you confirm the Elias Koteas story?
Wow.
From 1983. It's like my job as a film historian. I was like, yeah. Marty, I was there. Elias, I remember he went to the set. So it was so exciting for me to kind of like confirm some of the kooky things.
Well, I think leaving it at Martin Scorsese is a great way to segue to our first reader.
Yes.
Do you want to introduce her?
No, I'm going to let you in.
Okay.
I'm shy.
She is a wonderful actress on this show called Better Call Saul.
Yes.
Have you ever watch Better Call Saul? Amazing actress. And she's going to read a section on your experience on Goodfellas. Is that correct?
Yes. This is me sort of trying to attempting. I'm in a relationship
with Mr. Scorsese.
Mr. Scorsese.
And you're on the set.
And remember, Goodfellas.
This is our
future president. This is his favorite movie. Who would know?
Wow.
And attempting to get into the film with my boyfriend's movie.
So please welcome Ray Seahorn.
Yes, thank you.
Way down below the ocean.
Hi. Matt, you want me to go to this one or that one? I thought I was going to get to sit in Illeana's lap. It was sort of sad.
Because Illeana's going to sit there.
Oh, okay, great. Good.
Sit here? Cool.
Yeah. Because in case
I'll comment.
Yeah, like shake your head if I'm reading it back.
We're going to be here all night, so don't... There's booze, so don't... Right? We'll be here all night.
Do it. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Okay, let's just do this. This
And if
book is
anyone
so
has
good.
any questions afterwards, too, please
Okay,
feel free.
good.
Yeah.
It was early in 1989 that I first met Robert De Niro. It was right after the premiere of New York Stories. I was in a dark hall on my way to Martin Scorsese's apartment to discuss being in a movie called Wise Guys, later changed to be called Goodfellas. At the time, Marty was living in a very tall, very modern building on West 57th Street named Metropolitan Tower, nicknamed the Razor Blade Building. The elevator that took you to his penthouse apartment on the 75th floor was so fast, it was like a rocket launch. After you lurched to a stop and got off, the effect was always the same. Complete disorientation, nausea, and confusion about which dimension you were in. Everything was pitch black, as if you were in an air raid, so your eyes had to adjust like a raccoon's as you made your way down the hall. There was also this loud screeching sound day and night that Marty assured me was the wind whistling through the glass and steel, but it made you feel as if the building were going to crash to the ground. So there I am, making my way down the dark hall, and the wind is blowing like a haunted mansion at Knott's Scary Farm Marty's Spooky Hallway ride. And who do I see coming the other way but Robert De Niro? There was no official word that Robert De Niro was in the movie, or even considering being in the movie, so I got a little secret thrill that maybe that's why he was leaving Marty's. I smiled politely at him as I passed by and respectfully and quietly said, "Hello." He politely nodded back, said, "Hello," and we both kept walking. I did notice that he was wearing large horn-rimmed glasses that I thought made him look very sophisticated, like Clark Kent. It was a good look. Marty opened the door for me, and I just said hello to Robert De Niro. Does that mean he's going to be in the movie? And Marty looked a little concerned and said, "You recognized him?" I laughed and said, "Of course, he's Robert De Niro." And he said, "But he was wearing a disguise." And I said, "Marty, he was wearing glasses." And Marty said, "I know. He thinks that's a disguise." And I said, "Well, you might want to tell him it's not working because he looks like Robert De Niro with glasses on." I'm not sure if Marty did tell him, but I never saw him wear those Clark Kent glasses again. The casting of Goodfellas was top secret stuff. I was privy to hearing about and sometimes even seeing every actor or actress that was even in consideration, but I was sworn to secrecy. Listen, I knew that I was in consideration, and Marty wouldn't confirm or deny if I was going to be in the movie, and we were in a relationship. That's how top secret it was. There was a building excitement that Marty would be reunited with Joe Pesci and Robert De Niro, but names like Tom Cruise, Bruce Willis, and John Malkovich were also being mentioned. I let the De Niro casting issue drop, but it did not seem accidental that The Godfather had paid Marty a visit. The next time I saw Robert De Niro was on the set of Goodfellas. I became a fixture on set, sitting quietly behind or near Marty, absorbing everything that happened on what is often called the best film of the 90s. I was afraid not to go because I would miss something. One day, they were shooting at the Copacabana, which was near my apartment, and Marty said, "We're doing something pretty interesting today. You should come down and see it." It was, of course, the famous Steadicam shot entering from the back of the restaurant. Another day, we were jammed into the Hawaii Kai on Broadway. It was ancient, and inside everything was made of straw and grass. Marty said, "Careful, this place has fleas." And let me tell you, it did. I was at a booth watching Joe Pesci and Ray Liotta act the "but I'm funny how? Funny like a clown" scene, and then there was Mr. De Niro. Word was spreading about Goodfellas, and actors, mobsters, you name it, were requesting if they, too, could come down just to get a glimpse of Robert De Niro. In some neighborhoods, a carnival-like atmosphere developed, and folks were having cookouts and sitting in lawn chairs outside places where they were shooting. It was like they were a part of the atmosphere, and Marty harnessed that energy and put it into the film. It's hard to explain the impact of Robert De Niro at the time he and Marty were making Goodfellas. He was a god in New York. I mean, there were actors, Vincent Gallo, for one, who had agreed to be extras just to brag that they were in Goodfellas with him. I had just been watching, and I had been happy with that, but now I was going to be in a few scenes with him. In one scene, I was going to have a line right before his. Marty created an atmosphere on the set that was fun and homey, like a large Italian family. But the scenes with De Niro always changed that dynamic. His presence brought a tension and energy that I had never experienced before or since. When he walked on set, everyone stopped talking, and it was like, boom, something important is about to happen. We were shooting the famous Christmas scene in the bar where Robert De Niro chews out Johnny Roastbeef for having bought a new Cadillac. All of Brooklyn was outside cheering. As I've said, people were having barbecues and drinking wine and applauding every time an actor walked into or out of the bar. It was past midnight, but nobody wanted to leave. When they were shooting that last scene and De Niro opened the door and revealed the Cadillac, there were hundreds of people to the side that the camera had to avoid. Inside, I had a front row seat watching Robert De Niro. Enough time to get pretty nervous because my first line in Goodfellas was coming up. We had been shooting in the bar a few days, and there was going to be this very long, complicated tracking shot with most of the cast involved. And I had a line during it to Julie Garfield, which was, if I even look at anyone else, he'll kill me. The camera then holds for our reaction and then moves on to De Niro and Joe Pesci, and the scene continues. It was like an 8-minute shot. We rehearsed it almost all day. Finally, Marty said they were ready to shoot. And even though I had told myself, don't screw this shot up, don't do anything funny, don't do anything phony, don't do anything that makes Robert De Niro go over to Marty and say, how did that bad actor get in my movie? But still, I didn't quite pull it off. The first stupid thing I did was to try to get a laugh. I thought, let me goose my one line in the scene like a bad actor. So the camera is tracking along. There are 20 people in the frame. All these actions. Out of the corner of my eye, I see the camera getting to me, and all of a sudden I become Eve Arden. If he catches me with anyone, he'll kill me. Then I downed a glass of wine to button it. It was dreadful, of course. Awful and hammy. I knew it immediately, and so did Marty. He yelled out, cut, cut! Technical difficulties! Everyone started groaning. Everyone else had been brilliant. Marty came over to me and whispered into my ear so no one could hear it but me, don't do that again. Then he laughed, sorry, everyone, sorry, running back to the camera. Our fault, technical problems. $20,000 mistake, Marty later told me. He never let anyone know but me, but he cared enough that he wanted every actor in the frame to be perfect. People always ask me, what did you learn from Marty? 1,000 things. That was one. Sensitivity. A love for actors and their processes. I did it right the next 100 times, because we continued to shoot that same scene for the next 14 hours. There was a lot of downtime between shots, and this is where I learned the first surprising thing about what it's like to work with Robert De Niro. He's really funny. He loves to laugh. I was in a sketch comedy group at the time called Manhattan Punchline, and I dabbled in stand-up. I had a couple routines that Marty was aware of, so in between takes, he brought De Niro over to hear them. I used to do a pretty good Shelley Winters impression. She was then a blousy, older actress with a kind of warbly voice who had an association with the Actors Studio. She would make the talk show rounds babbling about her association with De Niro or Marilyn Monroe. She had this habit of sort of rubbing her rather large breasts and saying, when Bobby and I were at the studio with Marilyn, I taught Marilyn how to be sexy. So I would do that impression for De Niro, adding, when Bobby and I did Bloody Mama, he asked me for advice, and I said, Bobby, don't eat the fish off the truck, go with the chicken. Here, have some of my breasts. I had another routine called Raging Bullwinkle. Basically, cartoon characters Rocky and Bullwinkle acting out a scene from Raging Bull as Jake and Joe LaMotta. So, with Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci both staring me down, I did my Rocky the Flying Squirrel. You're nuts! You let this girl ruin your life! Then Bullwinkle.
Rocky, did you fuck my wife?
Then Squirrel. How could you ask me that? I'm your brother! People ask me if making Cape Fear was scary. No. Doing Raging Bullwinkle for Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci was much scarier.
Yay! Woo! Thank you.
Thank you, hon.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Very good.
I gotta ask you, did because you made up a line in Goodfellas, didn't you? You did one, not
I made
that
up
one,
many
not that,
lines.
but the
What?
one. My favorite
Which
line
one?
though in the at the beauty.
Miami?
Yeah, the Miami line. To give that one,
That's my
brilliant.
grandmother, Annie Scavetta. Shout out to Grandma.
Come on, give him the line. Don't know it.
Well, my grandmother lived in Flushing, Queens for many years. She worked at Gert's department store, spent many a time there, and then she and my grandfather ended up moving to Clearwater, I don't know, Deerfield Beach or something, Florida. They hated it. She's like, oh yeah, it's like you woke up and you're in Jew heaven, and that's what she felt about Florida. So again, my whole goal was like, if I'm in movies, somehow I will,
But didn't you do that line because somebody on the set said, "Hey, give her a line"? Like she was like.
No, my whole idea being in the movies was like, if you talk enough, they'll eventually put the camera on you and start shooting. I remember, again, I was in a relationship with this person, and he gave me a script, and I was like, I don't have any lines, and he's like, you'll come up with something. So when that was pressure. I wanted to stay.
Great line. You nailed it.
I wanted to stay in the relationship.
Yeah.
So
But what a great boyfriend to blame your mistake on a technical difficulty, though. That's a classy guy,
very sweet.
Michael Bay wouldn't have done that to anybody. He could. No.
It's so weird. So again, like when seeing that movie, in that scene, everyone remembers the scene, right? When the girl goes, "I love that Cadillac," They opened the door, and like they couldn't open the door far enough because there were hundreds of people outside with, barbecuing.
I had no idea. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah,
and they had to literally position the cameras in a certain way so as not to get all the background people yelling and screaming and De Niro, please.
Yeah, it was a carnival. And do people remember that Joe Pesci was a recording artist? That was.
You do.
Got to get you into my life. I satellite radio the other day.
Really?
Yeah.
What year? What year is that? And you called the police, yeah.
Yeah.
And you knew right then that Hillary was doomed when they're playing Joe Pesci on the radio.
70s, I think.
Wow.
Yeah. Loved to sing. He loved to sing. Another little funny story.
Did he go by Joe Fish back then, or was it Joe Pesci? Because he used to go by Joe Fish. I was like,
Joe Pesci.
Okay.
They had, another little funny thing about Joe. They were staying at, I can't remember. There's a hotel on Central Park West. But he was dating a woman who's now, sadly, I think she's in prison for murdering someone.
There you go. That's book 2.
Yeah. But I remember I was so earnest. I was from Connecticut. I had my one line in Goodfellas. And I said to Marty, I'm from Connecticut. I'm like, I'm going to write Joe Pesci a thank you letter. And Mr. De Niro, thank you so much for making me feel so comfortable. And I remember, and I wrote Joe a letter saying, thank you so much for, everything you've done for me, something cute or whatever. The Mayflower Hotel.
Okay.
Left it off for him at the Mayflower. He calls Marty and he goes, what the fuck is she doing? My girlfriend read that letter. She thinks she's fucking me now.
Wow.
Yeah. So I caused nothing but trouble.
You just can't go anywhere. Jesus, Illeana. Well,
sorry.
Well, moving right along,
yes.
from destroying $20,000 of Martin Scorsese's film to
sorry.
Our next reader is what is he reading? What section is he reading? I forgot.
Jesus.
Ben, what are you reading?
Oh! Listen, I adore.
But
can I just talk about how much?
Of course.
I have a crush.
I'll
on
give
Ben
the mic to you. Yeah.
Listen. My whole life, my whole dating career with Mr. Scorsese was based on, again, the knowledge that I knew film people, and so when I was, I got this part in doing looping for Last Temptation of Christ. So I was like, I used to love movies from the 50s, like where, girls would walk in New York, dun 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 dun, dun and then
can't help it. The girl can't help it.
Yeah.
That's from Pink Flamingos, actually.
And so every day I'd go in and I'd be doing my looping. I got a job working on Last Temptation, looping, and I'd walk in every day, and I was actually one of those women please God, I hope there's other women out there. But I was like, if Martin Scorsese sees I have the right book under my arm, he'll really think I'm a really unique, interesting person, you know. So I'd come in with like my autobiography of Joseph Mankiewicz, and it would work. It would work.
Wow.
Marty would go, "Oh, you're reading the autobiography of Joseph Mankiewicz? You know, that's not actually the best book on him. You know, there's another book, blah, blah, blah." And I'd be like, "Oh, is there? Oh, that's wonderful, Mr. Scorsese. What book should I be reading about him?" So we would have this, but I was madly, madly in love with Joseph Mankiewicz, because I always imagined he was like the type of guy that would be right for me, which is perfect, because I'm in New York. It's the 80s. I am not going to have a relationship with Joseph Mankiewicz. That's not in the realm of possibilities. But you know, I'd go to work every day, and that was kind of my fantasy. But Martin Scorsese was like, you know, second, third best thing.
Okay, really? Okay. Well, speaking of Mankiewicz's,
he was. I mean, again, you know, I'm gonna go on an island like he was.
Ben really wants to come down.
We're gonna bring Ben down there, but he was for me in all the reading. Like, yeah, that's the type of guy I want to be with. That's the kind of guy who will understand me, etc., etc. And then somehow, luckily, I got to meet him. So,
well, look who's to your left.
Look who's to my left, my darling Ben Mankiewicz.
I just want to say that you were an actress, so there was every chance you could have a relationship with Joe Mankiewicz.
I know. I didn't know that.
You met the threshold.
Yes, I didn't know that.
Do you have your copy? Because I have the. If not, I can do this. But I have the. I have the galleys because Illeana sent them to me, and
there it is.
Too cheap to buy my own copy.
Start with that.
I also have my. Okay, so yeah.
Can I just very briefly, when I was talking with my editor, Colin Deckerman at Flatiron, he'd go, "You tell me the stories, and then when there's actually photographs to back them up, that's what's disturbing." That I mean, you can tell by the photo. It's like, no, I'm not screwing around. What did I do? My first trip to Hollywood.
There's a photo of... The photo is of Illeana kneeling in front of a star on the Walk of Fame for Joseph L. Mankiewicz, my great uncle. First trip to Hollywood, priorities. Clean Joe Mankiewicz's star on the Walk of Fame, then try to call Billy Wilder. Years later, his grandnephew, TCM's Ben Mankiewicz, would thank me for being the family maid.
Yes.
But you just, as we'll get to, but that just so we know, the meeting you're going to describe, that you describe in the book with Joe, that was the only one, right?
Well, I saw him from afar because remember, I worked for Peggy Siegel, this film publicist, and I would get to call, you know, the wife and like. I didn't care about the movie. I'd be like, you know, we're screening Princess Bride, and I really think Joe Mankiewicz needs to see this movie. But I did. The first time I saw him the movie was Good Morning Vietnam, and they did the premiere at the 21 Club, and I did see Joseph L. Mankiewicz, you know, walking around 21 Club, and he was going around talking to waiters, you know. But, you know, I shot a film here, and again, I was like, oh, my God, this is so painful. Nobody knows who he is. And I knew who he was, but I didn't have the guts to talk to him.
So real quick, because you know better than I do, what actresses do we believe Joe slept with?
Everybody. Yeah. But that was my fantasy. That's why I wanted to be in show business. It was like, you're an actress, you get to sleep with the director, and then they'll tell you who you are.
I thought you get to sleep with a Mankiewicz, because I was thinking, fantastic. I love Hollywood.
Yeah. Judy Garland, Linda Darnell.
Yeah, Linda Darnell definitely.
I
think Marilyn.
Could be Marilyn.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, I met the guy, and I told Joe, He was 83 years old.
Well, I'll tell you what. Let's get to it, because you describe it well. All right, so the next example.
Ben is still around.
The next example of how my relationship to directors changed once I became an actress involves an equally impressive director, Joseph L. Mankiewicz. He was charming, witty, engaging, like all Mankiewiczes. All right, that part wasn't. That may not have been in there. He was charming, witty, engaging, all the things I expected. A good director needs to feel like he is directing. A good actress needs and wants to be directed. It's a symbiotic, often seductive relationship. So it's probably a good thing I never worked with Joseph L. Mankiewicz, who was rumored to have had love affairs with most of his leading ladies. Joseph Mankiewicz was right up there with Wilder for me. Some of my favorite films of his are The Pitch Perfect All About Eve, A Letter to Three Wives, and the romantic The Ghost and Mrs. Muir. I had seen Mr. Mankiewicz. I like it how throughout this she refers to Joe as Mr. Mankiewicz. That feels good to say. I had seen Mr. Mankiewicz at a number of Peggy Siegel's premieres, most notably Barry Levinson's Good Morning Vietnam. The after party was held at the legendary restaurant 21, which was prominently featured in All About Eve. When I saw Mr. Mankiewicz walking through the very rooms he had so brilliantly captured in some of that film's most unforgettable scenes, I thought, once again, movies and real life have collided. We were looping The Last Temptation of Christ, and Marty was impressed that I was reading the Mankiewicz biography, Pictures Will Talk, by Kenneth L. Geist. But he winced and said, not a very flattering book, and brought me one he much preferred, More About All About Eve, by Gary Carey, with Joseph L. Mankiewicz, along with Marty's own biography, Scorsese on Scorsese. Interesting way to court someone. Stop reading the book about the other director and start reading the book about me. Thought Joe was a bastard? What do you think about this guy? Obviously, Marty admired his work, so around the time of Cape Fear, I asked Marty if he might reach out to Mr. Mankiewicz, invite him to the premiere, and then we could have dinner with him. One of the things that was endearing about Marty is that whenever I would suggest meeting some of these Hollywood greats, he would suddenly become insecure. Why on earth would Joe Mankiewicz want to see Cape Fear? Then I'd remind him that, first of all, he was doing it for me. Second of all, you're Martin Scorsese. You're a great director. He'd be thrilled to meet you and see Cape Fear. Marty was always surprised whenever he found out that another director admired his work. He looked at Mankiewicz as if he were in another pantheon of Hollywood history. Well, Mankiewicz did indeed attend the opening of Cape Fear, and a few weeks later we arranged to meet him and his wife, Rosemary, for dinner at a restaurant he loved near his home in Bedford, New York, where Joe, I'll add, lived for the last 30 or 40 years of his life, many of those years after Cleopatra, with something that we like to call writer's block. Marty was, he made a Western called, I think, There Was a Crooked Man,
yes,
with Kirk Douglas.
Yeah.
And if you know anything about Joe Mankiewicz, this was not a guy put on earth to make a Western. Yeah, you don't make All About Eve and then a Western. But we have to have a horse? That would have been Joe's reaction. Why can't anyone wear a gown? Okay, so Marty was meeting him as the director of Cape Fear. Mankiewicz gave him an overall critique of the film, which was very insightful. Marty was humbled by his praise. They talked about the cameraman and the lighting, technical things. And then Mankiewicz turned to me, the actress. He proceeded to completely dissect my character, Laurie Davis. He broke down every single choice I had made. He read deeply into my character's psyche. Now, I hadn't even told Marty some of the homework that had gone into my emotional choices, but Mankiewicz had picked on every little nuance I had played as if he were a psychic. His blue eyes bored into mine. As he spoke, it seemed there was no one else at the table but the two of us. He wanted to let me know that he, and he alone, understood me. I felt like I was being redirected in Cape Fear by Joe Mankiewicz himself, which did not go unnoticed by the other director of Cape Fear, Martin Scorsese, who was glaring at us across the table. When he finished, I said, Mr. Mankiewicz, did all of your leading ladies fall in love with you? because I think I'm in love with you right now. He smiled and said, this sounds like Joe, by the way. All actresses want to be psychoanalyzed. They don't know who they are, so they want to be told who they are. And I find that's true of a lot of women. If a man can do that, said Joe, then any woman will fall in love with him. He said it in jest, writes Illeana, but I'm not so sure.
Yeah.
He said it in jest, but I thought there was tremendous truth to it. I was certainly putty in his hands, and he knew it. Tell me who I am, Joe. Tell me who you want me to be. We took some pictures, and he said he would sign them and send them along to us. A week later, they arrived. And there I am, sitting next to Mr. Mankiewicz, and I have this huge smile on my face, and so does he. And the caption Joe wrote read, "For Illeana, 20 years ago, this pose would be blurred." At first, I didn't understand what it meant, but Marty grabbed the picture away from me. Blurred? How dare he? My other director explained it to me. Blurred because you'd be moving around. Get it? Marty then refused to let me hang the picture. I loved that he was jealous of an 81-year-old, even if it was Joseph L. Mankiewicz. And what a memorable, sly line written by this witty screenwriter-director to his actress.
Yes. Amazing. Yeah, amazing.
What can you do?
What can I do with Mr. Mankiewicz?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of like inside stuff going on there. It felt like, didn't it? Do you like something like
Is that like again when he said that? Like all. I mean, I was
All women want to be told who they are by a man.
Yeah.
And the great thing is that you're Illeana Douglas, and you're like so strong and tough, and there's no one else like you. You were unreplicable, and yet you fell for that. You were like, yeah, man, tell me who I am.
Well, I do think there's this vulnerability of like, God, this relief. Tell me who I am. I don't know who I am,
Joe was famous, well regarded for how he wrote women. He could write for women, and it worked. I mean, it worked in the movies, and it worked for what Joe also wanted.
Again, I write in the book about this. Like, this is what I'm a sucker for. Like, oh yeah, I'm watching all these movies, and now I'm having this experience. Like, I want to have that experience.
I will just quickly say that as Joe died when I was 26 years old. I knew him pretty well because he was the last member of that generation. Yeah, I was. Terrified of him in every single encounter that we had.
Because he was an intellectual?
Yeah, that's exactly right. He was a super intellectual.
He really was.
And he presumed a level of intellectual understanding on the part of everybody sitting with him. Mm-hmm. And that stuff was way over I don't even know what most of his movies are about. I just read the teleprompter before the movie.
Yeah. But again, that goes into that thing of like my grandfather and what we were talking about before is we made this weird agreement with society that those people knew things that we didn't know. And so therefore, if I loved the movies and was in love with the movies, that someone like Joseph L. Mankiewicz, who made the movie All About Eve, if he was going to like deign on me, this is who you are, and this is, I'm like, all right, Joe, I'll do that.
Well, I'm going. Just for the record, I'll say this as before, and I'll let you move on, of course. But as his nephew, you don't have to refer to him every time as Joseph L. Mankiewicz anymore. He wanted to fuck you. You can call him Joe. Yeah. You know what? Because you're you. You can call him Uncle. You can call him Uncle Joe. It's a little weird.
So funny. Yeah. I was in the relationship with Marty. We lived on the Upper East Side, and I was like, where will we have our affair? Will it be at the Stanhope? I projected the whole Like once I got the picture. No, none of it was real, but it was fun.
He was 83, and I think 6 or 7 months later he was dead.
But I have the picture. At least I have the picture. I love that Marty was like jealous that, he was like 81 at the time.
Yeah, I don't think he was dead that quickly, by the way. Anyway, he's dead now. That's what's important. Okay. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Nutty bars over here, if anybody wants any. Thanks, man. I just love Ben and Illeana up here. It's like a total TCM moment. Like they're about to introduce a Henry Jaglom film or something. This is
the best.
Well, our next reader we're going to get to now because she has a flight tomorrow at 6:30 a.m. So let's them put them out of their misery.
God.
Yeah, but so without further ado, I'm not going to give it a big warm.
Yeah.
One of my favorite actors is Annette O'Toole. I mean, this is so great that we have her here.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you.
And one of my favorite films is Grace of My Heart.
Oh, thank you.
I told Illeana this.
Look at Jennifer. She's in the film.
Where?
Jennifer Warren, right
Where's Jennifer?
Here. Yeah.
Oh my God!
She's in the
It was
film.
so meaningful to my daughter and me at a certain time in our lives when we were living in Ashland, Oregon, and she still sings many tunes from that movie.
Complete labor of love, and Allison Anders, dear friend. Still,
it's just awesome. If you haven't seen it, you must see it.
Thank you.
I'm going to read something from your early days, your very, very early days.
Yes. This is me. Just to give you a very brief setup. My parents were in this hippie commune because they saw the movie Easy Rider. My father started a commune called The Studio. And then when I was like 7, 8, I made this kind of I sort of put it together that my grandfather was Melvyn Douglas, that he was like a really famous movie star. And so I immediately attached to him and sort of thought, okay, he's my father. How do I somehow get his approval, et cetera, et cetera? Now, he tells me he was discovered by David Belasco in like 30s Broadway, New York. So I'm living in Connecticut. I'm living in a friggin' commune, but I'm thinking somehow I got to find a path to be on the boards.
Yeah.
And that's where this comes up.
Yeah.
So
here we go.
Hope
Camelot.
that makes sense. You guys are awesome, by the way. Thank you.
They are. There's a lot of them. Don't let it be forgot that once there was a spot for one brief, shining moment that was known as Camelot. Those are the famous words King Arthur utters to an idealistic young boy about the magical kingdom of Camelot. My entrance into show business could not have been further from the magic of the Alan J. Lerner and Frederick Loewe musical Camelot, except that it was brief, it lasted for a moment, and it was called Camelot. I got my start at the Camelot Dinner Theater in Connecticut.
Yes.
Don't remember it, you say? That would be accurate. It lasted about 6 months. The Camelot was the kind of joint you performed in on your last stop out of show business on the way to the graveyard. Donald O'Connor was there for a week, died a week later. Richard Kiley toured in the musical Man of La Mancha for 50 years. He played the Camelot and never did the show again. The Camelot spared no one. One night, a man actually died in the audience. In the middle of You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown. We heard a crash, followed by a scream of, "My husband! My husband!" Snoopy in the chorus slowly stopped singing, "Happiness is dee-dee-dee-dee." The lights came up, and I saw a man literally killed by show business. His head face down in mashed potatoes and prime rib. His wife cried while the firemen slowly shook their heads and wheeled him away in a stretcher. They say the show must go on, but it's kind of hard to get the audience back after a thing like that. The highlight of the Camelot for me was meeting Rudy Valley and learning the value of a good tape recorder, but I will get to that, except I won't in this reading. You'll have to buy the book. The Camelot became the first sign of many that I was being singled out for larger life lessons, that maybe my life was destined to be a really, really good movie with twists and turns that made you wonder if the heroine would ever really make it. And if she did, would there be music playing in the background? One day I was riding my 10-speed home from high school when I saw a sign, "Coming soon, the Camelot Dinner Theater." I nearly skidded off the road. My grandfather got his break in the late 20s when he auditioned for theater god David Belasco. He headed to Broadway at the Belasco Theater. I was stuck in the boondocks without a theater or impresario in sight to give me a chance. The Camelot Dinner Theater would be my entree onto the boards. The next day, dolled up to an inch of my life and carrying a homemade headshot of myself, complete with hat, pretending to be a successful actress who had somehow managed to end up in the sticks, I met with a guy named Phil, who seemed to be in charge. He sat me down for an interview, and I immediately started trying to charm him. Mildly flirting with a man twice one's age to get a job is not yet considered politically incorrect. It worked, and he genuinely seemed to take an interest in me. Clearly, he had picked me up on my earnestness about a career in show business. He was my David Belasco. This is what I would later learn about Phil. Phil had no theater background. Phil was a manager of sorts, looking into something new. Phil, I would learn, was a pimp. Being a pimp meant that Phil's occupation left him with a lot of spare cash. Dirty money needs to be run through a legitimate business, so Phil's idea was simple. Why not open a dinner theater? Cleanse your money and put on a pretty good show while you're at it. Phil, as I later learned, ran by-the-hour motels out on the Berlin Turnpike. That was code for brothels. That's how prostitution worked in Connecticut. You drove out to the Berlin Turnpike and got a room, or you had sex in the middle of the woods with deer watching you. It's true, the first time I made out with a boy was in the middle of a forest. Ever since, the scent of pine needles has turned me on. Bring in a raccoon to watch me and we could make serious dough. Phil had a partner at the Camelot, and they worked together before. Her name was Rosie, not her real name. Her real name was probably inmate 6660027. But let's stick with Rosie. Phil's partner, Rosie, was, again, as the gossip went, a former prostitute. And Phil's number one girl. She was a hooker with a heart of gold, who apparently loved the smell of grease paint. It turns out that Rosie's dream, much like Rose's dream from Gypsy, and much like my dream too, was to be in show business. Now, my dream had not included working for a pimp and an ex-hooker who wanted to be out of the business and into show business. But beggars can't be choosers. Phil was your classic movie villain with slicked back hair and a thin mustache, beady brown eyes reeking of brute cologne. He usually wore some sort of horrible brown polyester suit, his gut bulging through a pistachio shirt with a tie that was much too short. Phil was hard to look at. And he was a little scary. But for some reason he took to me. Maybe it's because I didn't flinch the first time he showed me his gun. "This is a dangerous business," he said one night. It's hilarious. Then he opened his jacket, revealing a pistol in a shoulder holster. It was only a dinner theater, but I didn't argue. I just nodded. "You ever see a gun before, kid?" he said, patting his piece. "Sure," I said, "like on Burke's Law." Phil cracked up. "You're too much, kid." I hadn't meant to be funny. Burke's Law was a television show from the 60s and revived in the 90s about a millionaire chief of police who rode around in a chauffeur-driven Rolls Royce catching bad guys. Phil thought this dated reference was meant to be ironic. Most of my TV viewing took place during extended stays with my Italian grandparents in Queens, watching the shows that they liked. I thought that was TV. 20-year-old reruns of the Jack Benny program, You Bet Your Life, The Phil Silvers Show, The Untouchables. But my favorite was Burke's Law, with its gangsters and dames and all the men who wear guns under their jackets. "You're a good kid," Phil said, putting away his gun. I told Phil at that first interview that I wanted to audition for the upcoming musical, but he explained that all the shows were being cast out in New York. I was crestfallen. Phil said I might be able to be in the chorus, but anyone who was in the chorus would not be paid. That was a freebie. I would be paid only if I worked as a waitress, a busboy, or a cocktail hostess. I could be in the chorus after I paid my dues. Seemed pretty harsh. But that was show business, so I went along. Out of all the options, cocktail waitress seemed the most glamorous. And I had certainly seen my parents make drinks often enough. Luckily for me, Phil gave it away when he said, "But you have to be 18 to carry booze. How old are you?" "I'm 18, Phil," I said with a straight face. Phil laughed. "Sure, kid." Then he paused. "You're 16, right?" I got the feeling that Phil said "you're 16 right" a lot in his line of work. "Yeah, Phil, I'm 16. He stared at my homemade headshot. It was a really very vampy pose, backlit, as if I were a film siren. Phil looked me up and down again and made a decision. "Good," he said. "We'll tell everyone you're 18. I need someone with good boobs to carry booze. Let's go meet Rosie. She runs the day-to-day." Then he winked at me. A wink that promised, "Someday, if you're lucky, I will take you out back and grope you while you pretend you want me to stop." I found out two very important things that day. One, I had good boobs. No one had ever said that to me, although I thought I did. And two, keep your mouth shut during an interview. I was only 14 and should have in no way been hired to carry booze. Lovely.
God bless him.
Yeah, it's a lovely moment, and it reminds me of some encounters I had too.
I used to call my grandfather Melvyn Douglas, and I thought that's what show business was. Be like, "Grandpa, this guy, well, when you're in show business."
Yeah.
But the end of this crazy experience at the Camelot was that Rudy Valley came in.
Yeah, I love that part of the story. It's amazing.
And
he kind of broke your heart.
I found myself, again, it sounds so bizarre, but I'm in freaking Connecticut. We all probably, maybe not, maybe I'm in my own movie, but you think, I'm gonna find some way to talk to Rudy Valley.
Yeah.
He'll understand my dreams and my ambitions.
Yeah.
And so, I found myself backstage talking to Rudy Valley, who's freaking 86 at this point. And
Old men liked you.
Old men, yeah.
Yeah, Mankiewicz and
yeah,
Rudy.
I had the I don't know, maybe it was a World War I kind of. Here's Rudy Valley performing at the Camelot Theater. He's had all these successes, and I find myself backstage, and this poor guy he's trying to get on his freaking raccoon coat and finish his goddamn act with the megaphone, and it's a nightmare. And somehow I'm I know what my role is. I will find a way to give Rudy Valley his raccoon coat. I was like, "Yes, sir. Here's your coat, sir." So he somehow mistook that for me being there for him. So I knew. I was like, idea. Night 2, make sure you're there for Rudy Valley. So night 2, Rudy Valley comes off stage. I'm a vagabond lover. I'm like, "You're killing him, Mr. Valley. They love you in Middletown, Connecticut. Here you go, sir." And and by the end of the week, he said, "I have something I want you to listen to." And I went backstage, and I was 14 years old, and I was like, "This is it. Oh, my grandfather warned me about Rudy Valley's gonna pounce on me." And he played this little GE electric recorder, and I sat there in Middletown, Connecticut, and he said, "You know what that is?" And I said, "Is it the ocean, Mr. Valley?" And he said, "No, it's my applause. I tape it. I tape my applause." And it was, it stayed with me all these years, because again, it was this idea that you could somehow tape the joy that you've given people. And here's Rudy Valley, and no matter how many accomplishments he had, and here he is in the boondocks giving his all, and it was like a Limelight Chaplin-esque.
Yeah, it's
sort
very,
of
very
moment.
moving in the book.
know?
It's really heartbreaking because
thanks.
we've all, felt that,
If you could,
when you're on stage, it's about what you're giving to the audience and what they're giving you, and they're obviously they gave him a lot.
and that's the thing. This was this crazy disaster. I mean, I told you, imagine working a place. First week you're working there, somebody dies. You're like, do these people not understand the concept of show business? But and then you have like Rudy Valley, who's like night after night giving his all, and it really impressed me.
Well, it's a
thank you.
beautiful
Thanks
chapter. It's
thank
really,
you.
really fun. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Annette O'Toole. Amazing. Holy Toledo. Absolutely amazing. They have to read and run. They have a flight to catch.
No, where are you going?
Yeah.
Where you guys going?
Our son is getting married on Saturday.
What?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Congratulations, guys.
A lot of sparkly parties we gotta go to.
Awesome.
I won't even remember tonight.
Yay!
Thanks,
Love you
guys.
guys.
Take care,
Bye.
buddy. Okay.
Thanks so much
Wow.
for coming. Amazing.
I need a soakwood shower after that chapter. That was creepy. That was like, well.
Yeah, he's still around somewhere.
Oh, God. He's not in theater anymore, I hope.
Back at the Berlin tour. It's funny. When I would do the book tour in Connecticut, it was like, you do your in jokes. But Berlin Turnpike, Connecticut, everyone's like, because everyone knows Berlin Turnpike is where the brothels are.
Trump saves all of the applause from his speeches on an iPhone, and he plays it while he's having sex with his wife. He does that. What? Oh, really? I did not know that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. We're going to need to know that kind of stuff, That's important. Yeah. Okay. By the way, downtown LA is on fire, in case anybody was wondering what was happening in our little bubble. Yes, I'm teasing. Or am I? Our next reader, and she's up in the loft by herself now. She's up there all by. There she is. Yeah, I'm sorry. We have wine. I wanted to come.
We have
get
wine.
you,
We have booze. Does anyone need a drink?
Yeah, I'm playing bartender. Oh, there's Kate Micucci.
Kate Micucci.
Did I say that right? Is it Micucci? I'm so sorry. Come over here. And Kate is going to read the chapter on Illeana. What she's going to read the chapter on? I forget. She's the the great one, Marlon Brando.
Meaning Marlon Brando.
This is amazing.
Meaning Marlon Brando.
Thank you. Hey guys.
Hey.
Yeah.
Not
hi.
Hi, sweetie. Oh, I dropped my book. Sorry. I told you it's great with Trump. I'm no longer embarrassed about being an alcoholic. No, I'm such a fan of Kate. No.
I'm such a fan. I mean, what can you say?
I adore her.
But,
We did our show. We did our little web series.
That's the first thing we did. And then we did a movie together, and we got to hang out a lot.
Yeah, we did a movie together. We shared a trailer together.
Yeah, we danced in the trailer.
What Kate has that's so sweet is that, empathy and pathos.
Oh,
yeah.
Thanks.
That's what I think.
Is that why I've been crying all day? No, not to make it about.
Plus you have sad eyes. You know my theory.
But you have sad eyes.
Well, I have this theory. You can't be famous unless you have sad eyes. Think of Audrey Hepburn. Kind of have sad eyes. Yeah. So.
Well.
Yeah, we have that. Anyway, okay. So let me briefly give you a setup. I've met a lot of incredible people in my life. Has anyone ever met Marlon Brando? Has anyone ever met anyone that you think is a mystic? Because he was a mystic, and you knew that when you met him. And there's other people that I'm friends with, like Ed Begley Jr. and oh yeah, he was a mystic, And I miss him in terms of society. But again, the whole racket of show business was that I got into it because I was like, I want to meet fun people like Marlon Brando, So anyway, this is sort of my fun experience about meeting him and freaking out and blah, blah, blah. So go ahead.
Okay. Cool. All right, here we go. There are certain movie stars you just don't want to meet. You prefer that they remain cinematic and unreal. That's how I felt about Marlon Brando. He was and still is everything to me. Besides, what on earth would I say to him that would not be a fangirl and insipid? How could I express to him that I had a poster of him on my bedroom wall from The Wild One, and that I had pictures of him ripped from covers of Old Life magazines, and that I had stolen from the basement of my local library? I had watched his films, studied his acting, sought out his television interviews, read numerous books about him. I had just finished a book he had written about himself called Brando, Songs My Mother Taught Me. How do you have a normal conversation with Marlon Brando after you've seen The Godfather, or On the Waterfront, or Streetcar Named Desire, or Apocalypse Now, or even my childhood favorite, A Countess from Hong Kong? Excuse me, Mr. Brando, could you please pass the bread? And by the way, everything I am or want to be or hope to be as an actor is because of you. No, impossible. Couldn't be done. Wouldn't be done. I was literally shaking in the bathroom of the Beverly Wilshire Hotel. Marty just laughed. He couldn't understand why I was so nervous. He repeated, "You'll be fine. Don't talk about acting." I rolled my eyes. Yeah, don't mention that I audited classes with Stella Adler in the 1980s and that all she had done was talk about her most famous student, Marlon Brando. It was time to go, and I grabbed my autograph book. "Marty," I said as we were walking out the door, "do you think Marlon Brando will sign my autograph book?" Marty gave me one of his signature scolding looks. "Be good," he said. "What?" I asked innocently. I had started keeping journals and autograph books ever since the first one that Roddy McDowall had given me. He was right. I had met a lot of interesting people. My journals were packed with entries, photos, and autographs from all sorts of folks, and I had met and worked with. Marty never made fun of me for carrying it everywhere, and sometimes he even helped me get autographs. In some ways, he shared my level of excitement, but there was a limit. We were riding in the back of a limousine, and now I was the one grinning like a Cheshire cat in anticipation when I got my second "Illeana, be good." He doesn't sound like that, though.
Yeah, he does.
Does
just
he?
like it. Be good. Be good. Yeah.
Okay, that's. I could just hear. Okay, but we were riding in the back. Oh wait, I got that part. Okay, it was a term of endearment, but I knew what he meant. Both of us could easily slip from movie fan to movie fanatic. Marty had confessed that during fittings for Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, he had acquired a piece of James Dean's East of Eden wardrobe from the Warner Brothers costume department. Did he wear it?
Oh no! Like, we were in a relationship probably 2 years, and he took me up to the upstairs, and he's like, "I want to show you something," and it was like James Dean's jacket from East of Eden that he'd stolen, when they were doing he's like, we were looking for jackets for Chris Christopherson. I was like, "Oh yes, we need this is very important." He literally stole James Dean's jacket. Yeah. Yes, he's a thief.
One time we were having dinner at Elia Kazan's, and I excused myself to use the powder room. They were busy eating, so I knew I wouldn't be missed for a bit. Under the pretense of looking for the bathroom, I found myself instead upstairs looking for Mr. Kazan's office. I had to see where he wrote. I found it, and it was everything I dreamed. And I confess, since I always had a camera on me, I snapped some photos of it. I got back to the table, and Marty knew I'd been up to something. He said under his breath, "Be good.
Be good.
Be good." "What?" I asked innocently. When I was showing him the photos, I said, "I had to do it, Marty. It's history. It has to be preserved." He shook his head at me and then, of course, asked for several copies of all the pictures. We were at the event where Marty was being honored as a humanitarian, and I was running around collecting autographs from George Lucas to Sharon Stone in my sparkly micro mini. The stunning and statuesque Sharon Stone says as she's signing my book, "Don't you look like a little starlet?"
I was wearing, again, you gotta read the whole chapter. I'm like a student of show business. And I'm really good friends with dress designer Cynthia Rowley. And I'm like you. I'm old now, but I'm you. I'm young, I'm cute. I'm wearing my little Cynthia Rowley. It's way too short. My boyfriend's getting a humanitarian award. Sharon Stone goes, "Don't you look cute?" And I was like, "Oh, I've worn the wrong Why have I worn this micro mini? Anyway, go ahead.
Well, which of course she meant so sweetly, but made me feel with complete and utter certainty that I probably looked like a floozy at a dance hall.
Yeah.
I suddenly felt ridiculous walking around collecting autographs from famous people I knew. Yeah. So I went back to the table.
That's true. That's true. It's like George Lucas. Will you sign my autograph book? Yeah, your boyfriend's getting a humanitarian award. Yeah, okay. Go ahead.
So I went back to the table and deposited my book there. Marty, from afar, being embarrassed, asked, "Who did you get?" "Oh, you know, some people," I said, sort of shyly. Then he collected his award as a humanitarian. When the evening was over, we were rushing to get us out of there, and I realized in a panic that I had left the book behind at our table. When I went back to retrieve it, it was gone. Inside were all my memories, all my wonderful pictures and poems, entries from Sean Penn, Robert Mitchum, Gregory Peck, Steve Allen, Jane Meadows, Gore Vidal, Brian De Palma from the Toronto Film Festival, and an inscription from one of my heroes. How do you say that name?
Alan Rene.
Ah, thank you. Whom I met at the something film festival.
Which one? The Duville.
Okay,
Duville.
Great. That one.
Yeah, for a movie, Search and Destroy. Yeah.
Never to be seen or read again. Mm-hmm. It was childish, but at the time my whole identity as an actress was wrapped up in those words and pictures. I had worked with some of these folks, become friends with others. It was proof that I had made it in the movies, and now it was gone, and I was inconsolable. That was the emotional baggage I was carrying when I met Marlon Brando the next day. I put on a lumpy brown sweater over a thrift store plaid schoolgirl skirt and thick woolen tights and Doc Martens. It was too late to change. Even though he was always supportive, Marty took one look at me and said, "Is that what you're going to wear to meet Marlon Brando?" There was a knock at the door, and Marty and I exchanged nervous glances. He repeated his mantra, "You'll be fine. Be yourself." I nodded. Right now, myself was busy feeling sorry for myself, so I knew that I couldn't be myself. I would have to act something. I had once heard Orson Welles say that we no longer place a value on listening, so I thought, that's what I'll act. That's the part I'll play. I will listen with great intensity. I will be Marty's wonderfully listening girlfriend. I will be still and quiet and respectful. Oh my God, the door is opening. Why am I wearing this ugly brown sweater? There was Marlon Brando, and everything I was going to act went completely out the window. First of all, his presence, both physical and spiritual, was enormous. His eyes were a deep sapphire blue, a color I had never seen before, which was arresting enough, but astonishingly, they matched exactly the color of the blue velour sweatsuit he was wearing. I thought, Marlon Brando is wearing a blue velour sweatsuit. Who made that for him? Who owns that much velour? Does Marlon Brando know he's going to have to go through the door sideways? He said very quietly to Marty, "How do I look?" Marty said, "You look fantastic, Marlon." He was always a better actor than I. "Thanks," he said. "I've lost 30 pounds. Jesus, I thought, from what, 300? I am not going to make it. I'm a little embarrassed by my weight, he said. "Do you mind if we order lunch up here, away from prying eyes? Would you be all right?" Would that be all right? Marty had a suit and tie on. Of course, he wore a suit and tie to the beach, but still. We had clearly been ready to walk out the door, but without missing a beat, Marty immediately agreed that yes, of course, we would order up room service and have lunch in the room. That would be much better and much more intimate. Marty gave me a slightly panicked look, and I knew to discreetly call down to cancel our reservation. I left the room, and when I returned, Marlon Brando had made himself comfortable on the couch. What I mean by that was that he had taken all of the cushions off of the couch and tossed them onto the floor, and then he had taken one of the square seat cushions and propped it sideways so that it was like a pillow, and he was lying against it. There was nowhere to sit. He was basically sitting on the entire couch. With Brando already seated, I had a problem. I could not look at him, and Marty was eyeballing me like, "Sit down already." Opposite the couch were two French provincial chairs, and I took the one farther to the left of him so I wouldn't have to make eye contact, because I was pretty sure if I did, I would burst out laughing or crying or ask him about acting or be a phony or any of the other things that Marty had warned me not to do. I wanted to position myself slightly away from them so I could do my listening thoughtfully act, but not intrude upon the conversation. I instantly became a distraction. They were discussing the project, which was a biopic of John Mitchell, the Attorney General for Richard Nixon during the Watergate scandal, and his wife Martha. Marty tried to bring me into the conversation because my grandmother was the Congresswoman Helen Gahagan Douglas, who had run against and lost to Richard Nixon for a seat in the U.S. Senate, and Marty thought that Brando, a longtime liberal, would be interested in that. Marty signaled for me to join in the conversation, and I tried to say something interesting, but I just sailed off into the air, and I thought, oh yeah, go back to fake listening, Illeana. They started talking again, and I felt really stupid and out of my depth, and I was thinking, why do you make me talk, Marty? I can't say words when I'm nervous. You know that. Why am I even here? Marlon Brando doesn't want me here. I should try to excuse myself and go to the other room and leave them alone so they can talk about their project. That's when I heard Marlon Brando say to Marty, so, this is your lady friend. And I could feel the gaze of Marlon Brando upon me. Time stopped. People say that's a cliche until it happens to you. Marlon Brando stopped time. That's how good an actor he was. I could feel the gaze of Marlon Brando boring into my psyche. The gaze of the world's greatest actor, known for his keen observation of human beings, was turned on me. Stop everything, he said. Look at your feet. Everything stopped while we all looked at my feet, which were inverted toward each other and pigeon-toed. That's a sign of insecurity, he said. Why should you be so insecure? Was this one of those tests that Marty had talked about? Was Marlon Brando testing me to see if I was a phony? Well, I'm no phony, I thought. Suddenly, a wave of emotion went through me, to him and back to me, and my eyes filled with tears, and things got very real very quickly. I was trying to hold back tears and wasn't succeeding. My dear girl, he said, what is it? There was a rumbling inside my core, and suddenly his voice inside me just started talking, and I couldn't stop. I said, I am so sorry, but this is really emotional for me. I mean, you're Marlon Brando, and everything I do or want to do or be is because of you, and I am insecure. And Marty started to laugh really nervously and explain, she's very emotional, Marlon, and he kind of put his arm around me as if to suggest, be good, pull yourself together, kid. But it was too late. All of my insecurity, all of my fears of not being good enough rose to the surface. I decided in an instant not to deny it, but just to live, as my acting teacher Sanford Meisner had taught me, truthfully in the moment under the given circumstances. So I looked at Marlon Brando, and I just started to cry. Marlon Brando's eyes were now locked with mine in what felt like a mystical connection, and he said, my God, you're a tuning fork. Now I'm crying. We were both crying. Marty ran to get a box of Kleenex, which he handed to Marlon Brando, and then Marlon Brando handed me tissues, and Marty started to tell Marlon Brando about how I had lost my autograph book and how upset Marty was because it was all his fault. And then he had that he had hustled me out of there, and how they always were rushing him out of places, and that he was planning to surprise me by getting Marlon Brando's autograph for me, and now Marty is crying too. All of this truth rained down on us in a suite at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel. Eventually the tears turned into laughter, and the whole thing was absurdly embarrassing and wonderful. What can I say? You simply could not be inauthentic in front of Marlon Brando. He made me be myself. Any notion of that this was going to be a normal meeting was scattered like the Kleenex at our feet. At the feet of Marlon Brando, I was exhausted and starving.
Ah, yeah. Ah.
Thanks for having me.
Yay! Awesome.
You know what? Eventually there will be a second part of this book because you are going on a TCM cruise next week with who?
Jerry Lewis.
Wow. That's
Michael
right.
York. Of course, the great.
But Jerry Lewis.
Mankiewicz.
Like Jerry Lewis is going to be on a cruise ship, like a Kathy Lee cruise ship.
Yeah.
This time next week.
Yeah. There'll be stories.
There's going to be many stories about that. That's absolutely stunning. Yeah, exactly.
Hopefully there will be.
Leaving out Kim Novak.
Oh, my God.
Kim Novak,
I know.
wow.
We have our own, we have our Robert Wagner story. That was...
Keeping him right here,
May I tell a very brief Robert Wagner story?
Please.
First, a big hand for Kate for that. Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Kate Mutucci. Yay. Thank you so much.
What's your...
So I got married on the TCM.
Incredible.
I got married.
I was the bride's.
I got married on the TCM cruise. Illeana was the maid of honor. There were the captain married us. It turned out it didn't count because it turns out the state of California doesn't recognize the Caribbean as a place. But nonetheless, so But anyway, very short version. Robert Wagner, my father was there, but my wife's father wasn't, and Robert Wagner ended up walking my wife down the aisle. But it was after a night where Robert Wagner had split a bottle of tequila with basically no one. The whole bottle. We were told, like, order this kind of tequila, and then sure enough, and he polished it off. So the next morning, he was like, he says to my wife, he's like, "Is it all right if we all wear sunglasses?" She's like, "That's all." And my wife put sunglasses on.
Yes.
And then as we start to walk down the aisle, he says to my soon-to-be fake wife, "I'll give you the same message. Since your father's not here, I'll give you the same words of wisdom that I gave my daughters when they got married. Chin up, tits out."
Yes.
Wow. That's going to be on the $1 bill in a year from now when Trump isn't all. Yeah, exactly. That's going to be the. You think? Yeah. Wow. Well, how can we top that? I can, because we have kind of a dinner theater motif going on tonight with Camelot, and we're going to end it with a little. I'm going to sort of just get that out of the way, because these two, when they take the stage, nobody can even.
We don't even know what's going to happen.
Jennifer Tilly is going to come on out here and do some. She drove all the way from the West Side, brave traffic, to do this. So come on out.
The doll. Hello.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Hello.
I'm going to stand up.
You are?
Because that's the kind of gal I am. Oh.
Before we start reading, do you remember when we went?
It's really loud. It seems like it's unplugged though, right? Thanks, Ben. He's cute, right? Okay. All right.
She's such a doll. I'm no one compared to Jennifer. Remember when we went to the auction?
I've never been so close to the audience in my life. They're like hungry beasts. Yes. Okay.
Oh my God.
I'm going to shrink into the corner here. Okay.
Wait, do we want any setup before this?
No, you said you remembered something. We went to the auction.
Well, we went to the auction. I remember we went to the Marlene. Jennifer is taste and style, and I'm hanging on to show business by my fingernails. But we went to I remember when we went to the Marlene Dietrich. Do you remember that one?
Yes, I bought so much stuff. I have Marlene Dietrich, like bathing suits, coats. I have a cane that Noel Coward gave her for a cabaret act. I should run around the house and put Post-its on everything that used to belong to Marlene Dietrich, because if it wasn't for that, it would just be a bunch of junk.
Those are the things that, like, that's why I got into show business. It's like a part of it is to be in the movies, but again, like, I remember when I was like, I'm with Jennifer Tilly, and we went to the Marlene Dietrich.
And I got in show business so I could buy a bunch of overpriced junk. That used to belong to famous people.
But we had not met. Like my brief setup of this film is I'm a student of show business, and I always secretly wanted to be in a movie that was a total train wreck. I wanted, like, my Myra Breckenridge. I was like, they were all shooting it day after day. Didn't they know that it was what was happening? Well, I got it with Bella Mafia.
When we did this movie, we all thought it was going to be a very important movie because it was written by Linda LaPlante, who did Prime Suspect with Helen Mirren. And Vanessa Redgrave was in it. And, of course, we all wanted to work with Vanessa Redgrave, not knowing what we know now. And,
we all were sort of...
It was going to be a really, really class operation. We were going to shoot in Palermo, Italy. Las Vegas, New York. And then after we signed on, they go, we spent too much money getting the actresses. We're filming the entire thing in Pasadena. So there's literally a scene where we're supposed to be in Las Vegas, and they do an overhead shot of Hollywood Park. On the roof it says casino. That was Las Vegas. But our acting was fantastic.
Yes.
Especially mine and Illeana's, because we figured out very early on we were not making an Emmy Award-winning opus. We were making a camp fest. And so we adjusted our performances accordingly.
So we're going to read, if anyone has questions along the way, it's like, yeah, this actually all really happened. But let's hit it, and we'll see where it goes. Yeah.
My favorite disaster movie I was part of was the miniseries Bella Mafia. About $3. Are you going to groan through the entire reading?
I'm going to be like Rachel Maddow.
About $3 broads and their mafia mama seek revenge on the men who killed their husbands. I always thought Alive was going to be the most challenging film I worked on, but I was wrong, as I told Bella Mafia's 76-year-old director. That's when I knew I had lost it. I worked on a mountain! We flew to the set by helicopter 14,000 feet in the air in the snow for Disney! And it was easier than shooting this scene! In my defense, I said that only after the following exchange occurred over a bowl of nuts.
All right, I'm playing David Green, outraged elderly director who cannot hear. What are you doing?
Confused actress. Me. I'm eating the nuts, holding out a nut in my hand to show him.
Director, are you going to eat that nut? Are you? Because if you eat that nut, I will not shoot the scene.
Actress, fine. Take the nuts away.
Actress hands the bowl of nuts to the art department. Art department is standing by with a bowl of nuts. First assistant director, losing the nuts. Director, hang on. You can't shoot the scene without eating the nuts. First assistant director to the art department, holding on the nuts. Art department, I'm holding my nuts. By this time, entire crew is snickering. Incredulous director David Green. Are you saying, Illeana, you can't do the scene without the nuts?
Incredulous actress, if you have nuts on the table, I am going to eat the nuts. If you don't want me to eat the nuts, take them away.
First assistant director, that's a wrap on the nuts. More snickering from the crew. Director David Green. I sweat the nuts in the scene. I want the nuts in the scene. Art department comes back with the nuts. Director David Green to the actress, me. Are you saying, can you do the scene with the nuts?
By this time, there were tears in everyone's eyes as they struggled to hold back laughter, except for me, because this was not remotely funny anymore. I tried one last fateful time to explain the nuts. Actress picks up a nut from the bowl and says with the very best of intentions, David, she is nervous in the scene. She is meeting her mother-in-law. As she is nervously waiting, she thinks about eating a nut.
Frustrated, tired director. Are you finished with the nut? When you're finished with the nut, we'll start to shoot the scene.
Frustrated, tired actress loses it, references Alive. She worked on a mountain, blah, 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 blah. No, David, no. I am not done with the nut. What I am saying is, you are nuts. You're nuts. So I don't need any more nuts in the scene because you are nuts. I am done with the nuts. And And to this day, this is my all-time favorite quote from any director I have ever worked for.
Director, fine. Illeana, you do it wrong and I'll shoot it and we'll all go home early.
Applause from the casting crew. Probably the funniest scene I was ever a part of, not caught on film. According to my Bella Mafia co-star, Jennifer Tilly.
Right there.
There is more to the story.
Yes.
We finally finished shooting the scene, and David, our director, came over to me and said very sweetly, I was going to have a lovely close-up of you, but you took so long with the knots, we ran out of time. And
scene. So, this is so long. This is like Noises Off. So we're truncating this. But I'm telling you,
where's my wine? Where is it?
Yeah.
Where is it? I need it.
But I mean, the affection I have for the cast and the director, like, I've dined out for years on Bella Mafia stories. So we're going to go in depth because this was my dream. I wanted to be part of a movie that was a train wreck and figure out like what went wrong. And so I'm going to start with like the reasons that I think it went wrong. I'm going to start with who I blame, which was Vanessa Redgrave. Oh my God, to work with Academy Award winning actress Vanessa Redgrave. I saw every movie she was in. Julia, she won an Academy Award. It was a film I particularly loved, as well as the TV movie Playing for Time. She was a genius, is a genius. Every moment she plays on film, you can't take her eyes off her. When I was in acting school, true story, I went to see her in Orpheus Descending. You know, they used to like go, is she going to take her clothes off tonight? This was like so deep inside New York, but certain nights she would take her clothes off for that Broadway show, Orpheus Descending. Life-changing. This was going to be the most thrilling experience of my life, and it was. On the very first day of shooting this scene, we were shooting a scene, we were cleaning up after a murder or something. We don't know. Anyway.
We were always mopping up blood.
Yeah. We're always mopping up blood. And we were in a scene, we were all in black slips, and we were displaying a lot of cleavage. That was Tits and Guns, which was the executive. He told me that I was going to be in the movie, a lot of tits and guns. And I was on the floor, and I was scrubbing blood with a brush, and I was crying. And Vanessa Redgrave whacked me in the face with a bloody towel, and I whacked her right back. It was like, oh, real actor studio stuff. I'm down for this. I'm into it. And she laughed afterwards, and she put her arm around me. She said, marvelous, yeah, marvelous. It was marvelous. Come to my room for some tequila. And Vanessa Redgrave took me under her wing, and I thought, oh my God, this is why I got into show business. This movie's going to be amazing. I'm going to learn so much. The second day we were shooting a scene, and she started to have a discussion with the director, David Green, about some piece of business involving luggage tags. Mm-hmm. Okay, the director it seemed simple, right? No, she said, I completely disagree. They wouldn't have luggage tags. Isn't that right, Illeana? I completely disagree, David. Don't you, Illeana? And I was going to have to decide on the second day whose side I was on. And, of course, I thought, I'm going to agree with Vanessa. Who doesn't want to have tequila every day? And the director never forgave me. I was on his bad, non-hearing well side for the rest of the production.
One day, I was walking to the set, and I was very upset about my swiped dress, which I will get to in a moment.
Yeah.
And I passed by one of the producers, and he was shaking. He said, "You missed the worst scene in there." And I said, "Oh, the scene was bad?" And he sighed and he said, "Well, that too, but the scene between Vanessa and David." I doubled over with laughter. One particularly long day on the set, they were going at it, and Jennifer Tilly quipped, "This movie isn't going to end because she is going to kill him, and then there will be the trial of Bella Mafia, and we'll all be shooting that."
Like I said, a lot of laughing and crying. Now, we're going to get to some of our co-stars. We have so many, but let's touch on Nastasia Kinski, shall we? Okay, one day I came to work and I passed Nastasia Kinski. She said hello very quietly, and I noticed something strange about her. She was wearing my dress. "Hi," she whispered as I passed. I should mention that Nastasia barely spoke above a whisper. Sexy in real life is great, but in a scene it's tough when you're trying to act with that person. I would be with her in a scene a foot away from her, and I would look at Jennifer and I'd say, "I can't hear anything. Is she talking?" And then Jennifer would answer in her signature baby voice, "What did she say?" I'm like, that's why I'm leaning forward in every scene in this fucking miniseries. I never could hear my co-stars. Anyway, I'm here in Hollywood. I headed to wardrobe, and I said, "Guys, I just passed Nastasia Kinski, and she's wearing my dress." I know, they said. She saw it hanging there, and she wanted to wear it. I said, "But I'm wearing it. You picked it out for me. I'm wearing it in the scene." The wardrobe lady was so blasé. By that point, she said, "Yeah, we tried to explain that to her, but she liked it." I said, but wait a minute. I wore the dress in another scene, so we're both going to be wearing the same dress in different scenes. So our characters, even though we're wives, we share dresses in the scene, and they didn't even care. They just shrugged.
I couldn't wait to get to the set every day, pen in hand, ready to write down everything that happened. Then again, who would believe it? I've often joked I became friends with Jennifer only so I could have someone to confirm the crazy on-set stories. I learned a lot about humor on the set of Bella Mafia. So many people wrote in my autograph that my sense of humor had got them through what one actor had described as madness. When something happened, I just took my cue from Dennis Farina. I didn't complain, I just made a joke about it. There were always trailers or rooms for everyone on the set, but somewhere along the way they started thinking of Jennifer Tilly and me as roommates. I would get to the set and I wouldn't have a trailer, and they would say, "Oh, we put you in Jennifer's room because we know you two are friends." Well, we weren't really friends. I'm sure they were just doing this to save money, but I never said anything because, of course, I wanted to room with Jennifer. Who else could I have a nice gossip with, and I really hoped we would become friends. In the morning, I would see Jennifer in the makeup trailer. She hardly needed any makeup. She was naturally very beautiful. Okay, I just wrote that part myself. I would see her in the makeup trailer, and we would exchange pleasantries like, Jennifer, you're so gorgeous. What do you do? And Jennifer would say, oh, nothing, just born that way. Okay, pleasantries, something like that. All the bad writing is mine. And she would leave, and I would think, I bet she has no idea she is sharing a room with me. I can't tell you how many times I would go to Jennifer's room, lugging my costumes, and she would be lounging on the bed, reading a script, or taking a nap, her clothes strewn about, and she would be completely surprised, but always gracious about my arrival. And I would explain that apparently they had assigned me to her room again. And I would clear a path among her shoes and her jewels, and I'd find myself a spot. I was trying to make her laugh with something outrageous that had happened on the set. I don't know if I just wore her down, but eventually I would just go to her room whether I had my own room or not. So I could pester her about some of my favorite Jennifer performances, such as the ones in Belle, Let It Ride.
Yes.
And of course, Bullets Over Broadway.
Genius.
Hold for applause. We got up to a lot of... She actually put that in because she was worried people wouldn't know who I was. So that is actually there in the book. I was not self-promoting. We got up to a lot of hijinks together. One day, we decided we would overact a scene, playing with lots of wild hand gestures. So if the line was, there on the table, we would both point wildly at the table, as if it was a murder mystery. There on the table! Or if the line was, they are taking the roof from over our head, we would point madly to the roof. They're taking the roof from over our head. Poor David, I think once he almost noticed what we were up to. The worst outrage of Bella Mafia is we never got to do another movie together because I love Jennifer to pieces, and I think she's just wildly talented.
Yes.
She created a type, sassy, sexy, funny, a Jennifer Tilly type that only she can play, although I have tried to imitate her on many occasions, except for the cleavage. Jennifer wrote in my autograph book, you have a knack of repeating the way something happened and making it hysterical. I laughed till tears squirted out of my eyes. Let's hope we're not in the television version of Valley of the Dolls.
Yay, thank you so much. Yay! Yay!
Woo! Thank you.
And Illeana got a part that I really, really wanted, which was to die for. I went in, I gave it my best, and at the end, Buck Henry was very, very perturbed. And he said, you said a lot of stuff that wasn't in the script. And I suddenly realized I had made a horrible, horrible mistake. And next thing I knew, there was Illeana wearing ice skates doing my part.
Well, it's so funny because, I wrote about it in my book. It was like, well, that was an interesting time where you'd like go audition for a movie and there'd be like 30 people you really respected that were trying to be in the movie, so it was intense.
Let's have another round of applause for all our readers. Ray Seahorn, Ben Mankiewicz, Kate McCucci, Annette and of course Jennifer Tilly, everyone. Jennifer Tilly, absolutely amazing. If you want, we can do a quick Q&A. If you guys have any questions for it, then we're going to open it up and we're going to do this whole signing thing. Is that right? But if you guys have any questions, come at us, or you can save them and wait and ask her in person as she signs your book for you. You can do either one. please field any questions, anybody? We covered a lot tonight, so you know,
you guys
may need to be
awesome.
backtracking.
Thank you so much.
You guys have been great.
There's many more
We're so glad we could make you guys laugh tonight because, let's face it, we all needed it, I think, and I'm glad you guys came out, okay?
Thank you, Matt.
Now go home and yell at egg avatars on Twitter and write a blog and, no, come on. But thanks again, guys. Questions? Coco. Yes. Hi.
I've heard you speak on this before, and in case anyone hasn't heard, like the moment where we actually met Dennis Hopper.
Insane, because you have to remember my dad had like a poster of him in our living room. He was our God, our disciple. And then, I was so excited to meet the real Dennis Hopper and ask him for all the money I thought he owed me and blame him for my whole childhood. Yeah. And then crazily on the night I was doing a low budget movie, and on the day I was supposed to meet him, which is a very long extended story, but I was in a car accident on the day I was supposed to meet him, and it ended up that the way I met Dennis Hopper was having him cradle me kind of in my arms. And so I had this kind of transformative experience where essentially sort of, I forgave my own father because of meeting Dennis Hopper and sort of understanding the importance and the poignancy of films and what that was. But Dennis Hopper was a mystic. Yeah. He was an incredible photographer. He changed filmmaking with a movie like Easy Rider. And again, we're in this critical time where it's we're so cynical. And I think that the thing that I got from my parents was this innocence that they really thought seeing a movie could change their lives, and they believed the values of Dennis Hopper. And I really believed when I met Dennis Hopper, he carried those values with him. And I feel that movie stars do that. I feel that Gregory Peck is the guy from, and if we don't have that, we have nothing. We have to look to these people, the Sidney Poitiers, the Dennis Hoppers, where our brains are like wet cement, and we've looked to them and like, all right, well, we may not agree about religion and this and that, but again, we believe in these movie people, and they sort of show us the way. And so Dennis Hopper certainly was that for me. And doing this film with him, Search and Destroy, he was a mystic, and he loved James Dean. That person changed his life. And yeah.
I'm curious. I have a quick question.
Sure.
The movie Lost in America with Albert Brooks is basically about. Have you ever met Albert Brooks and mentioned this to him?
Well, he's in my book because, again, my life is a movie. I met him under extremely crazy circumstances. I was shooting a web series at a place up in Bel Air. It's a very long extended. He's like my idol. I love Albert Brooks. To me, he's like, he created sort of uncomfortable comedy. But, I did get an opportunity to meet him very briefly. And it was, to me, that's always like those moments where we have to look at where like, oh, the gods are touching us. And we're moving
one of my coolest celebrity sightings. I once saw John Cleese walking into a Relax the Back store, which is awesome because he does the whole like silly walks thing, and it just the him walking in there was like such a surreal thing for me. That was the coolest thing I ever saw.
Pasadena, very nice.
You what?
I saw him at Broman's in Pasadena.
John Cleese,
a wonderful guy. Yeah.
So that's the thing. We like they sort of give us a lift, and we don't even know why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody else with questions? Or sir, hi.
Hi, Illeana. You said tonight that your life is a movie.
Yeah.
So when you were doing Grace with My Heart, you mentioned earlier that you went into the Brill building when you were working there.
Yeah.
Which was later on, of course, there, but earlier was the songwriting place. And then you also mentioned being in the commune with your parents. And both of those things were in that movie. Did you have your own life affirming, like, gee, I am in a movie?
Oh, listen, when I worked for Peggy Siegel, I got out of school and I used to walk the halls of the Brill Building, and there's a crazy movie. Does anyone remember the movie called The Best of Everything? Like, again, these 50s movies where, like, pretty girls with nice hairdos would move to New York. Like, that's what I thought my life was going to be. I'm like, I'm now working for Peggy Siegel, but she's really like Joan Crawford. And so I would go to vintage stores and I had my little outfit and I'd walk the hall of the Brill Building and I'd look at the guy in the morning and he'd be polishing the brass. And I was totally in love with the aesthetic of what the Brill Building was. And I was completely convinced that all I needed to do was like walk through the halls of the Brill Building and, meet my future husband. Maybe he'd be Stephen Boyd, and guess what? It's Martin Scorsese, But like the first day I worked, I was riding in the elevator, and I was riding in the elevator with Warren Beatty and Elaine May, and they were talking about Ishtar, and I was like, yeah. This is the world. Who wants to be a waiter, This is the world. So sometimes there is a little bit of stardust in terms of maybe possibly creating the world you want to be in. I mean, again, when I worked for Peggy Siegel, we worked with Sidney Pollack. I wasn't, and I write about this in the book, I wasn't an actress. I was so excited just to be in show business. So if I was assigned to Norman Jewison or Sidney Pollack or Rob Reiner or any of the people that we were working with, I accepted that as part of my journey into, well, maybe I'll become an actor, maybe I'll be a writer, maybe I'll be a director. It just seemed like I was living my life as if it were a movie. Yeah.
We have to wrap it up. We're running a little bit behind schedule. But
terrible.
Okay, real quick one.
Just because you and Marty, do you have any Harvey Keitel stories like reading Marty or anything funny?
He's a doll. My only Harvey Keitel story, I've got two. I remember being in acting school and he was doing Hurly Burly on the Upper West Side, and he hit on me.
Wow.
I was thrilled. I was like, a movie star is kind of hitting on me. But then years later, I just remember like Marty talking about him as in Last Temptation of Christ, and that it may have been a mistake to have him do the voice of the lion. But he sort of sounded like Groucho Marx. I sort of remember that. But in that part. But he's amazing and lived downtown in the Village and amazing actor. Has anyone seen him in the film Youth? The Italian?
Yes, with Michael Caine. Yes, it's very...
My God, what an incredible...
Yeah.
I'm a huge Harvey Keitel fan.
They're literally telling me I have to get off stage.
All right, we cannot...
A big hand for Illeana Douglas, and please, if you have any more questions, in line to get your book signed out.
You've been listening to the Skylight Books author reading series. Don't forget that you can listen to this and all of our other great podcasts at skylightbooks.com. Thanks again for stopping by, and we hope to see you soon.